I don't know of another university that has a podcast production house. We have 6 million plays of our podcasts. And so I think that puts us in a stratosphere that, professionals are shooting for. So I joined the University of Texas School of Journalism and Media in 2011. And when I came here, I was like our social media digital person. In 2016, the Dallas Morning News, through the Below Foundation, gave a $1.5 million grant to the school to create an innovation fund. One of the things I wanted to do was to make a podcast, maybe about media innovation or maybe the big guests that come through here, things like that. But I worried that we wouldn't get a big audience. So I kind of put that on the back burner, focused on other things. And then around fall of 2018, I had a student employee in my office who was working with me on innovation projects. And I had just this kind of moment of, I know what I should do with the podcast. I should have a way for students to create long form podcasts. And so I pitched it to her. I was like, do you think students would want to do this? And of course she was like, yeah, that would be really fun. And so I went to New York City a couple months later, like over the winter break of 2018 and early 2019, and met with people at the New York Times and Gimlet and Pineapple Street and a couple other places, Slate, to try to get an idea of like, how does a podcast production house work? How should it work on a college campus? So I came back pretty fired up, and I hired 2 students who were both seniors, Haley Butler and Tanu Thomas. And we kind of just sat in my office and thought like, all right, let's make podcasts. Like, what should we start with? We had some ideas of like doing one on the alums who won Pulitzer Prizes. We have a bunch of those here at the school. And then we also said, well, both of them love true crime. What kind of story could we do on true crime? And I was an editor at the Austin American-Statesman, to go back in time a little bit, in 2005 when the murder of Jennifer Cave happened in West Campus, which is just a couple blocks from our building. And I remembered just how strange of a story that was, how heartbreaking it was, and how involved it was in detail.
Colton says he has no memory of what happened the night Jennifer was killed. But he does remember answering the door the next morning and finding another UT student named Laura Hall looking to help him. Later that day, Colton finds himself in the passenger seat of Laura's car, and they're driving to Mexico.
The Drag's first podcast came out in summer of 2020, which was The Orange Tree. That was before I was working in this job, but The Orange Tree was our first true crime show. It was massively popular. It reached the top 20 on Apple Podcasts, and it caught a bunch of attention of donors and advertisers and all of that good stuff. So then I came along about 6 months later, and since then we've put out more shows than I can count. It's like 4 or 5 by now, but we've released season 2 of our true crime show, which was about the Austin bomber. We rebranded The Orange Tree as Darkness, and season 3 of that comes out this October, and we have 5 additional seasons in production right now. We've also come out with a historical true crime series. Season 1 of that is out. It's called Devilish Deeds. Season 1 is about the servant girl Annihilator, which was the first serial killer in Austin in the 1800s. We also have a show called 35, which is sort of a road trip along Interstate 35 in Texas, telling stories of culture and community along the highway. And then we had a show called Crooked Power that came out this summer. That's actually based in Ecuador, because we had an Ecuadorian student working with us on that one. And it is a story of a fiery, for lack of a better word, president in Ecuador about a decade ago, and the story of our former student's newspaper. His family owns a newspaper, fighting against that president for a free press. And our latest show, Planet Texas, recently came out, and we partnered with Planet Texas 2050, the research group here on campus, for that. And it is stories of climate change resilience in Texas.
In March 1989, University of Texas student Mark Kilroy had everything going for him. He was preparing to take the MCAT exams and apply to medical school. In far South Texas, it wasn't uncommon for students to cross the border into Mexico to continue the party. But after a night of partying in Matamoros, Mark Kilroy never came home.
Season 3 of Darkness is based on a story about a UT student in 1989 who went to South Padre Island for spring break, crossed the border into Matamoros, and was kidnapped and ritually sacrificed by a cult that included a bunch of members of a really famous for her infamous drug gang in Mexico at the time, sort of before the cartels were really coming into power there.
It's as much of a border story as it is a true crime story, and there's so many different parts to it that I think we're telling that I'm super excited about. So it starts off as like a student who went missing, and like the struggle of his family trying to find them, them keeping their like faith throughout the whole search, but it's also like a story about the border and border culture and like essentially two countries coming together to find someone and like that whole process.
I don't think of this as a class project. I think of this as a professional level experience for our students. And there's still a lot of teaching that goes on, and mentoring and coaching, maybe more so than if you were, working at a Gimlet or Wondery, where they just kind of expect you to know things. But we expect the quality at the end to be up there with the best.
I think what makes the drag so special is just the environment. The drag is a place where, we have some really talented students who like not only work on like their projects, but also help other people. And I think that's what I haven't really been in a place like that where kind of support each other and like really encourage each other to do the best work that we can, but also like being able to go to someone and being like, I don't know how to write, and then them being the same way of like, yeah, we're in the same boat. So I think just the environment of having like bosses who are supportive and like will help you grow, but also other like students who can kind of piggyback off your ideas and get through like big projects like this together.